The morning sun cast long shadows across the playground of New Eden Elementary School when the ships appeared in the sky. Children were laughing and running around during their break time, their voices echoing across the small colony settlement. 8-year-old Maya was showing her friend how to properly kick a soccer ball when the first shadow fell over them. The Zephyrian attack fleet descended like a dark storm cloud, their sleek vessels gleaming with an alien beauty that would have been mesmerizing under different circumstances. The ships were massive, each one larger than the entire school building, with strange geometric patterns carved into their hulls that seemed to shift and move in the sunlight. Captain Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the readings on his scanner. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he processed the information. The intelligence reports had been clear about this remote human settlement. It was supposed to be a minor agricultural outpost with minimal defenses. The perfect target for their first strike against the human expansion into Zephyrian space. Sir, we're detecting approximately 200 life forms in the central complex, his tactical officer reported, his voice carrying the typical Zephyrian clicking sound. Most appear to be juveniles, as expected from the intelligence data. Vextar's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Taking out a human breeding facility would send the perfect message to Earth's government. Humans were expanding too quickly, settling on worlds the Zephyrian Empire had marked for future colonization. This small settlement called New Eden was just the beginning. Once they eliminated this outpost and its young inhabitants, other human colonies would think twice before establishing themselves in disputed territories. Down on the playground, the children had stopped playing. They stood frozen, looking up at the alien ships with a mixture of wonder and growing fear. Some of the younger ones started crying. The older children tried to comfort them, just as their teacher had taught them to do when someone was scared. Mrs. Rodriguez, the playground supervisor, quickly activated the emergency alarm. The piercing sound echoed across the colony, sending parents and workers running from their homes and workplaces. But they all knew there was nowhere to run. New Eden was a frontier settlement, days away from the nearest military outpost. They had a few hunting rifles and some basic security equipment, but nothing that could stand against alien warships. Sarah, a 10-year-old with pigtails, grabbed her little brother Tommy's hand and pulled him toward the school building. Come on, Tommy, we need to get inside like they taught us in the safety drills. The children moved with surprising organization, helping each other toward the building. The older students guided the younger ones, sharing the calm confidence their teacher had instilled in them during countless practice sessions. Even in their fear, they remembered the lessons about staying together and looking out for each other. Inside the school, Principal Johnson was frantically trying to establish communication with the approaching fleet. The radio crackled with static before a cold, mechanical voice came through the speakers. Human settlement, you have trespassed on territory claimed by the Zephyrian Empire. Your presence here is an act of aggression that cannot be tolerated. Prepare for immediate termination. Johnson's hands shook as he held the radio. Please, we're a peaceful colony. We have families here, children. Surely we can discuss this. There is nothing to discuss, came the reply. Your species expands like a plague across the galaxy. We will begin with your breeding stock and work our way up to your military installations. Perhaps this will teach your kind to respect clearly marked boundaries. The principal's face went pale. He looked around at the teachers and staff who had gathered in the main hallway, all of them understanding what the alien had just said. They were planning to attack the children first as a message to humanity outside. The Zephyrian ships moved into attack formation. Their weapon systems powered up with an ominous humming sound that could be heard even through the school's walls. The energy readings were off the charts, enough firepower to level the entire settlement in minutes. Captain Vextar studied the tactical display one more time. The humans had ceased their radio communications, probably paralyzed with fear. Good, fear was an excellent teacher, and the lesson he was about to deliver would echo across human space for generations. Target the central complex where the juveniles are gathered, he ordered. Full power on the first strike? We want to ensure complete elimination and maximum psychological impact. His weapons officer's claws danced across the control interface. Weapons charged and locked on target, sir. Ready to fire on your command. Vexstar raised his primary arm, savoring the moment. This would be the beginning of the end for human expansion. Once word spread that the Zephyrian Empire was willing to target human children, their expansion would grind to a halt. No parent would risk sending their family to a frontier colony. Fire, he commanded. The energy beams lanced down from the ships. Brilliant streams of destructive force that lit up the morning sky. They struck the school building and the surrounding area with devastating precision. Explosions bloomed across the settlement as secondary targets were hit. Dust and debris filled the air, and the sound of the attack echoed across the valley. As the smoke began to clear, Vexstar expected to see nothing but ruins and scattered remains. Instead, his scanner showed something impossible. The central complex was still standing, surrounded by some kind of energy barrier that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Sir, his tactical officer's voice carried a note of confusion. The structure appears to be protected by an unknown defensive system. Our attack had no effect. Vexstar's four eyes narrowed. The intelligence reports had said nothing about defensive capabilities. This was supposed to be a simple agricultural settlement with no military installations. Yet somehow they had withstood a full-power assault from his flagship. Then his communications officer spoke up, his voice trembling slightly. Sir, I'm receiving an incoming transmission. It's not coming from the settlement. Source? Vexstar demanded. Unknown, sir. The signal appears to be originating from everywhere and nowhere. I've never seen readings like this. A new voice filled the bridge, calm and controlled, but carrying an undertone that made every Zephyrian warrior present feel a chill run down their spines. It was human, but there was something else there, something that spoke of vast knowledge and barely contained power. This is Professor Marcus Chun, the voice said. Captain Vexstar stared at his communications console in disbelief. The voice that had just spoken carried an authority that seemed to resonate through the hull of his ship. His tactical officers exchanged nervous glances, their usual confidence shaken by the failed attack and this mysterious human who claimed to be a teacher. A teacher? Vexstar clicked his mandibles in what passed for Zephyrian laughter. You protect your breeding stock with an educator? How pathetically typical of your weak species. I am not just any teacher, Professor Chun's voice replied, still maintaining that unnervingly calm tone. I am a retired Terran Defense Force instructor. These children are under my protection, and you have made a very serious mistake. Down in the school, the children huddled together in the main hallway, their eyes wide with fear, but trusting in their teacher. Professor Chun stood among them, but he looked different now. Gone was the gentle, grandfatherly figure who had been teaching them about the wonders of the galaxy. His posture was straighter, his eyes harder, and there was something about him that made even the oldest students step back slightly. Mr. Chun, whispered Sarah, the girl with pigtails who had helped her brother earlier. Are we going to be okay? The professor knelt down and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his expression softening for a moment. Yes, child. You're all going to be perfectly safe. I promise you that. But as he stood back up and faced the windows, his expression hardened again. The other teachers and staff had never seen this side of him before. In the 2 years since he had arrived at New Eden, Professor Chun had been nothing but kind and patient, teaching the children about science, history, and the importance of curiosity and learning. Principal Johnson approached him cautiously. Professor, what exactly did you do out there? Our security systems aren't capable of stopping an attack like that. Chun's eyes never left the alien ships hovering outside. I activated some old protocols. Emergency measures that I hoped I would never need to use again. What kind of protocols? Johnson pressed. The kind that were developed during the Rigel conflict, Chun replied quietly. When humanity first encountered hostile alien species, we learned that sometimes the best defense is an overwhelming offense. But we also learned that knowledge, properly applied, can be the most powerful weapon of all. Up in the Zephyrian flagship, Captain Vexstar was growing impatient. Enough of this nonsense. Deploy ground forces. If our weapons cannot penetrate their defenses, we will take the facility by force and eliminate the juveniles manually. Sir, his tactical officer interrupted. I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures coming from the settlement. The readings don't match any known human technology. Vexstar dismissed the concern with a wave of his claw. Irrelevant. Deploy the assault teams immediately. 3 smaller ships detached from the main fleet, each carrying a squad of Zephyrian warriors. They were impressive soldiers, standing nearly 8 feet tall with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws. Each warrior was equipped with energy weapons and personal shields that could deflect most human firearms. As the assault ships approached the school, Professor Chun's voice came over the communication system again. Captain Vexstar, this is your final warning. Withdraw your forces immediately, or I will be forced to take defensive action. Vexstar's laugh was harsh and grating. Defensive action. Old human, you are about to witness the superiority of Zephyrian military might. My warriors will tear through your pathetic defenses and eliminate every juvenile in that facility. I see, Chun replied, his voice growing colder. You leave me no choice. The professor walked to a wall panel that the other staff members had never noticed before. It looked like a simple maintenance access, but when Chun placed his palm against it, the panel lit up with complex displays showing readouts that made no sense to anyone else in the room. Computer. Activate Protocol 7. Authorization. Chun, Marcus. Service number, TDF 7749 Omega. A new voice filled the school's corridors, mechanical but somehow reassuring. Protocol 7 activated. Welcome back, Professor. How may I assist you today? Chun's fingers moved across holographic controls that materialized in the air. We have hostile forces attempting to harm civilians under my protection. Initiate graduated response procedures. Understood. Beginning with non-lethal deterrence. Outside, the Zephyrian assault teams had just touched down when the ground beneath their ship suddenly became unstable. What had appeared to be solid Earth moments before was now revealed to be a sophisticated holographic projection. The assault ships found themselves sinking into what was actually a specially designed containment field. What is happening? Demanded the squad leader as his ship's engines strained against an invisible force up in the flagship. Vexstar watched his tactical display in growing confusion. Report. What is the status of our ground forces? Sir, the assault teams appear to be trapped in some kind of energy field. Their ships are immobilized and the warriors cannot exit their vehicles. Professor Chun's voice came over the communication channel again. Your soldiers are unharmed, Captain, but they will remain in containment until you agree to withdraw. This is still a non-lethal response. I urge you not to escalate this situation further. Vexstar's rage was building to dangerous levels. His honor as a Zephyrian commander was being challenged by a single human teacher. This could not be tolerated. Release my warriors immediately or face the consequences. I'm afraid I cannot do that, Chun replied. Not while you continue to threaten innocent children. In the school, the students pressed against the windows to watch the alien ship struggling against the invisible barriers. Little Tommy tugged on his sister Sarah's sleeve. Sarah? How is Mr. Chun doing that? Sarah shook her head in wonder. I don't know, Tommy, but remember what he always tells us? That learning and knowledge can solve any problem if you apply them correctly. One of the younger teachers, Miss Patterson, approached Professor Chun with obvious confusion. Professor, I don't understand. How is this possible? What kind of teacher were you before you came here? Chun paused in his work at the control panel and turned to face her. For a moment, his expression was sad, almost regretful. I was the kind of teacher who had to learn that sometimes protecting students means more than just grading papers and explaining equations. He gestured toward the trapped alien ships outside. I spent 15 years developing defensive systems for human colonies on the frontier. These children deserve the same protection that every human child should have, regardless of how far from Earth they live. Captain Vexstar, meanwhile, was consulting with his senior officers. What are our options? We cannot return to the Empire having been defeated by a single human. Sir, his science officer spoke up, I've been analyzing the energy signatures from their defensive systems. The technology appears to be far more advanced than anything in our intelligence files about human capabilities. Impossible. Humans are a young species with limited technological development. Perhaps, sir, but the readings suggest that this particular human has access to defensive systems that rival our own technology, possibly exceed it in some areas. Vexstar's mandibles clicked nervously. If this was true, then the intelligence reports about human capabilities had been drastically wrong. But he could not show weakness now. Charge all weapons to maximum power. If we cannot penetrate their defenses with standard firepower, we will overwhelm them with everything we have. Professor Chun's sensors detected the energy buildup immediately. His expression grew grimmer as he realized the aliens were preparing to escalate beyond non-lethal responses. He turned to Principal Johnson and the other staff members. I need you to take the children to the lower levels immediately. All of them. Professor, what's happening? Johnson asked, though he could see the answer in Chun's increasingly serious expression. They're preparing to use maximum firepower. My defensive systems can handle it, but there may be some environmental effects. I want the children as far from the surface as possible. As the staff began organizing the evacuation to the school's basement levels, Professor Chun returned to his control panel. His fingers moved with practiced precision as he accessed systems that had been dormant for years. Computer, prepare for graduated escalation. If they want to use maximum force against children, the alarm bells echoed through the corridors of the Galactic Council's primary station, their haunting wail cutting through the usual hum of diplomatic chatter. Ambassador Zexthara of the Veltar Confederation pressed her scaled fingers against the viewing port, watching as emergency vessels streaked past in brilliant flashes of blue light. The stars themselves seemed dimmer today, as if the universe knew what was coming. How long? She whispered to her aide, though she already knew the answer would bring no comfort. 72 standard hours, Ambassador, came the reply from behind her. The Devourer's fleet will reach the outer colonies first. After that, the young Veltar's voice trailed off into silence. Zexthara had lived through 3 centuries, witnessed the rise and fall of dozen civilizations, but she had never seen anything like the approaching darkness. The Devourers were not just another hostile species seeking territory or resources. They were something far worse, a mechanical plague that consumed entire worlds, converting all organic matter into fuel for their endless expansion. Where they passed, nothing remained but hollow shells of planets, stripped bare of life. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos when she arrived. Representatives from 47 different species argued, pleaded, and shouted in a dozen different languages. The massive holographic display in the center showed the grim tactical situation. Red dots marked the Devourer fleet's position, while blue indicators showed the scattered defensive forces of the Alliance. The math was simple and terrifying. They were outnumbered 50 to 1. We must evacuate the Outer Rim immediately, bellowed General Korth of the Titanax Empire, his forearms gesticulating wildly. Save what populations we can and fall back to the core worlds, and abandon 30 billion souls to those machines? Countered Elder Solana of the Ethereal Collective, her translucent form shimmering with indignation. There must be another way. Admiral Chen Wei of the Terran Federation sat quietly in the human delegation section, her weathered face studying the tactical display with calculating eyes. The other species barely acknowledged the human's presence. After all, Earth was one of the newest members of the Galactic Council, admitted only 50 years ago when their rapid technological advancement caught the Alliance's attention. They were still considered primitives by most standards, a species that had only recently learned to harness fusion power when others had been bending space-time for millennia. What about the threshold devices? Suggested Ambassador Mortex of the Crystal Cities. We could use them to collapse the hyperspace routes, trap the devourers between dimensions. And trap ourselves as well, replied the Veltar military advisor. Those routes are our lifelines. Cut them, and half the Alliance worlds would starve within a year. The debate raged on, but Zexthara found her attention drawn to the humans. There were only 3 of them in the vast chamber: Admiral Chun, a younger officer she didn't recognize, and Dr. Sarah Martinez, Earth's foremost expert on artificial intelligence. They sat in perfect stillness, a stark contrast to the frantic energy surrounding them. She remembered the day humanity first contacted the Alliance. Their crude radio signals had been detected by a Veltar deep space monitoring station, and the discovery had sent shockwaves through the galactic community. A species that had never left their home system, broadcasting their existence into the void without any knowledge of what might be listening. Most council members had dismissed them as reckless children playing with forces beyond their comprehension, but the humans had surprised everyone. Within a single generation, they had reverse-engineered Alliance technology, developed their own innovations, and earned their place among the stars. Their ingenuity was remarkable, but their military contribution to the Alliance had always been minimal. Earth's fleet consisted of barely 200 vessels, ancient by galactic standards and equipped with primitive weapons. The deep space arrays are confirming the projections, announced the Council's military attaché, a stern Korthani whose voice cut through the arguing. The Devourer Vanguard will reach Proxima Station in 71 hours, 14 minutes. All evacuation ships are to begin immediate departure protocols. The chamber fell silent. Proxima Station housed 12 million beings from across the galaxy, including the largest refugee population from the Outer Rim conflicts. There weren't enough ships to evacuate even a quarter of them. There is one possibility, said Admiral Chung, speaking for the first time. Her voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the chamber. We may have a solution. Every eye in the chamber turned toward the human delegation. General Korth's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. What could Earth possibly offer that our combined fleets cannot provide? Admiral Chen stood slowly, her uniform bearing the simple insignia of the Terran Federation, a blue circle representing Earth, surrounded by 5 stars. We've been working on something. A project that might stop the Devourers permanently. Humans have been in space for barely a century, scoffed Ambassador Thylex of the Machine Worlds. What could you have developed that our civilizations have not already attempted? Dr. Martinez rose beside the Admiral, her tablet displaying complex equations that made even the advanced AI representatives pause. We call it the Lazarus Protocol. It's based on a fundamental understanding of consciousness transfer and quantum resurrection technology. The chamber erupted in disbelief. Several species had attempted consciousness transfer over the millennia, but the technology remained theoretical at best. The quantum barriers were simply too complex for organic minds to overcome. Impossible, declared Elder Solana. The ethereal collective has researched consciousness manipulation for 3,000 years. The quantum matrices required would demand computational power beyond anything in existence. Beyond anything you've tried, corrected Dr. Martinez, but not beyond human imagination. You see, we've approached the problem differently. While you've attempted to preserve consciousness through technology, we've learned to weaponize death itself. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background hum of the station system seemed to fade into nothingness. Admiral Chun activated a small device on her wrist, and the chamber's holographic display shifted to show a single human ship, unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen. It was smaller than most frigates, its hull a matte black that seemed to absorb light itself. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, and energy readings showed power levels that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. It's Lazarus, Admiral Chun announced, humanity's gift to the galaxy, and perhaps our final redemption. Ambassador Zexthara felt a chill run through her scaled spine. In the human's eyes, she saw something. The secure briefing room deep within the council station buzzed with nervous energy as Admiral Chun began her presentation. Representatives from the major military powers sat around the crystalline table, their various forms of skepticism written clearly across alien features. The holographic projector cast an eerie blue glow over the assembled delegates as technical specifications for the Lazarus scrolled. Passed. You're asking us to believe that Earth has developed technology that surpasses our greatest achievements? General Korth's 4 eyes narrowed to suspicious slits. A species that still uses chemical propulsion for planetary launches? Dr. Martinez stepped forward, her fingers dancing across the control interface. The display shifted to show complex quantum matrices that made even the ethereal collective's representatives lean forward with interest. General, you're thinking in terms of conventional physics. What we've discovered transcends traditional technological boundaries. Transcends physics? The mechanical voice of Designate Prime 7 from the machine worlds carried a note of digital derision. Our quantum processors have calculated every possible consciousness transfer protocol. The energy requirements alone would drain a star. Only if you're trying to preserve the consciousness, Admiral Chun replied calmly. We're not interested in preservation. We're interested in weaponization through voluntary sacrifice. The room fell silent except for the soft humming of translation devices. Ambassador Zextara felt her twin hearts skip a beat as the implications began to sink in. You're talking about deliberate death, she whispered. We're talking about resurrection as a weapon, Dr. Martinez corrected. The Lazarus protocol doesn't just transfer consciousness. It creates quantum echoes that can be triggered at the moment of death. When a human dies while connected to the system, their final moments become ... amplified. Admiral Velktar of the Hegemony Navy was the first to understand. His pale blue skin went even paler as he spoke. You're turning your dead into bombs? Not bombs, Admiral Chun said quietly. Something far more sophisticated. When a human consciousness passes through the Lazarus matrix at the moment of death, it creates a quantum cascade that disrupts the electromagnetic foundations of artificial intelligence. The effect propagates through any connected network within a radius of several thousand kilometers. Designate. Prime 7's optical sensors flickered rapidly, the machine equivalent of blinking in shock. You've weaponized the moment of death itself. That should be ... impossible. Dr. Martinez smiled grimly. Humans have always excelled at making the impossible seem routine. Our entire history is built on individuals choosing death over surrender. We simply decided to make that sacrifice count for something more. The holographic display showed simulation after simulation. Each one demonstrated the same terrifying result, a single human death, creating an expanding wave of disruption that shut down mechanical systems across vast distances. The Devourers, being purely artificial entities, would simply cease to exist within the effect radius. The crew of the Lazarus consists entirely of volunteers, Admiral Chun continued. Each person connected to the quantum matrix has accepted that their mission will end in death. But their sacrifice will save billions of lives across the galaxy. Elder Solana's ethereal form shimmered with what might have been horror or awe. How many? 12,000, Admiral Chun replied without hesitation. The minimum number required to generate a cascade effect capable of reaching the Devourer command ship. Once their central intelligence falls, the entire fleet becomes nothing more than drifting metal. General Korth slammed one massive fist on the table. This is madness. You're talking about mass suicide on an unprecedented scale. What kind of species volunteers for extinction? The kind that understands debt, a new voice said from the chamber's entrance. All heads turned as President Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Federation entered, flanked by a small security detail. Her presence commanded immediate attention, not because of rank, but because of the weight of absolute authority she carried. Madam President, Admiral Chun said, standing at attention. I wasn't expecting the galaxy is about to end, Admiral. Protocol seemed less important than being here personally. President Vasquez moved to the head of the table, her eyes meeting each alien representative in turn. You want to know what kind of species volunteers for this? Let me tell you about humanity's debt to the stars. The holographic display shifted again, showing historical records from Earth's first contact with the Galactic Alliance. Images of massive refugee ships, medical facilities, and technological exchanges filled the air. 50 years ago, when we first reached out beyond our solar system, we found a galaxy at war, President Vasquez began. The Veltar Confederation was fighting for survival against the Silicon hegemony. The crystal cities were under siege from biomechanical plagues. The ethereal collective was being hunted to near extinction by energy parasites from dark space. Ambassador Zexthara's memory stirred. She remembered those dark days when her people had been pushed back to their final strongholds, when extinction seemed inevitable. The Alliance could have ignored us, the President continued. A primitive species with nothing to offer but curiosity and determination. Instead, you shared your technology, your medicine, your knowledge. When the Terran Plague hit Earth in 2387, it was Veltar medical science that saved 3 billion human lives. When our atmospheric processors failed on the colony worlds, Crystal City engineers worked for months to restore them. The room remained silent, but Zexthara could see the recognition dawning in her fellow ambassador's eyes. For 50 years, humanity has been the recipient of galactic charity. We've taken your gifts, learned from your wisdom, and grown strong under your protection. But we've never been able to repay what was given to us. President Vasquez's voice grew stronger. Until now, she gestured to Admiral Chun, who activated another display. This one showed the current tactical situation, but with the Lazarus's projected effect overlaid in brilliant white. The expanding circle of disruption encompassed the entire Devourer fleet. The Lazarus Protocol represents the culmination of human innovation built upon Alliance foundation. Every technology we've incorporated came from one of your worlds. The quantum matrices are based on ethereal research. The consciousness transfer systems use modified machine world processors. The energy containment is pure Crystal City engineering. Dr. Martinez stepped forward again. We couldn't have developed any of this without your gifts, but we brought something to the equation that none of your species possessed, a cultural willingness to embrace death as victory. Your civilizations have spent millennia trying to preserve life. Extend consciousness, defeat mortality, President Vasquez said. These are noble goals, and they've led to incredible achievements. But sometimes preservation isn't possible. Sometimes the only victory available requires sacrifice. Designate Prime 7's optical sensors dimmed as it processed the implications. You have constructed a weapon that can only be fired once, at the cost of your entire crew. Yes, Admiral Chun confirmed. The Lazarus cannot be operated remotely, cannot be automated, and cannot be reused. It requires human consciousness, human choice, and human death to function. 12,000 volunteers have already been selected and are currently aboard the ship, connected to the quantum matrices. This is what makes you different, Ambassador Zexthara said softly, finally understanding. Not your technology or your innovation. Your willingness to choose extinction over failure. President Vasquez nodded gravely. Every species in this room has contributed to humanity's survival and growth. Now we have the chance to repay that debt in full. The only cost is ourselves. The chamber fell into contemplative silence. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the drama unfolding in the small room. But within those walls, the fate of trillions hung in the balance. Captain Maria Santos felt the neural interface warm against her skull as she settled into the command chair of the UTS Lazarus. Around her, the bridge hummed with an energy that seemed almost alive, 12,000 human minds linked through quantum matrices, their thoughts and emotions flowing like electricity through the ship's consciousness-based systems. "Status report," she called out. Though the information was already flowing directly into her awareness through the neural link, The sensation was unlike anything experienced in conventional spaceflight. Every crew member was connected, their individual expertise becoming part of a collective knowledge that transcended normal human limitations. All quantum matrices stable. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Jiang Wei from the engineering station. His thoughts carried undertones of calm acceptance mixed with fierce determination. "The cascade generators are charged and ready. We have approximately 67 hours until optimal intercept position." Through the viewports, the stars looked different than they had from any other ship Maria had ever commanded. The Lazarus existed partially outside normal space-time, its consciousness-driven systems creating ripples in reality itself. Every connected mind could feel the approaching darkness of the Devourer fleet like a cold wind against their souls. "Communications from the Alliance fleet," announced Ensign Patel, her mental voice carrying traces of awe. "Admiral Veltar is requesting final confirmation of our mission parameters." Maria closed her eyes and let her consciousness expand through the ship's network. She could feel every member of her crew, scientists who had volunteered their children's future, soldiers who had chosen duty over survival, civilians who had simply decided that some things were worth dying for. The youngest was Dr. Kim Sato, barely 25 years old and the foremost expert on quantum consciousness interaction. The oldest was Chief Warrant Officer Buck Morrison, a grizzled veteran of the Titan Wars who had seen enough death to know when it was necessary. "Open a channel," Maria ordered. The communication system engaged not through traditional means, but through the collective will of 12,000 minds focused on a single purpose. Admiral Veltar's image materialized in the holographic display, his pale blue features tense with barely controlled emotion. "Captain Santos, the Council is requesting final confirmation." "Are you certain there's no other way?" "Admiral," Maria replied, her voice carrying the certainty of their shared conviction, "we've run every simulation, explored every alternative. The Devourers have evolved beyond conventional warfare. They learn, adapt, and overcome every strategy we've tried. This is the only path to victory." Behind Admiral Veltar, she could see other figures in the Alliance Command Center, General Korth pacing nervously, Ambassador Zexthara standing motionless with what appeared to be tears running down her scaled cheeks, President Vasquez maintaining her diplomatic composure despite the weight of what she had authorized. "Captain," came another voice as Dr. Martinez appeared in the transmission from the Council station. "We're detecting some unusual quantum fluctuations from your position. Is the matrix stable?" Dr. Sato's consciousness touched Maria's awareness, bringing with it complex technical data and a surprisingly calm emotional state. "Tell her the fluctuations are expected," Sato's thoughts conveyed. "We're operating in uncharted territory. The interaction between 12,000 linked minds and quantum reality is creating effects we didn't anticipate, but they're not dangerous. If anything, they're making us stronger." Maria repeated the message, watching as Dr. Martinez's expression shifted from concern to amazement. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only weaponized death, but had discovered a new form of consciousness that transcended individual existence. "We're receiving long-range telemetry from the advanced scouts," Lieutenant Commander Zhang announced. Through the neural link, the tactical data flowed into every mind aboard the Lazarus simultaneously. The Devourer fleet was massive, over 5,000 vessels of varying sizes, their hulls covered in the organic-mechanical hybrid technology that allowed them to consume and convert entire worlds. "My God," whispered Chief Morrison through the mental link. "Look at the command ship." The image that filled their shared consciousness was terrifying in its alien beauty. The Devourer flagship stretched for over 50 kilometers, its surface a writhing mass of mechanical tendrils and conversion chambers. Energy readings indicated power levels that dwarfed small stars. Within its hull, the collective intelligence that controlled the entire fleet processed information from 1,000,000,000,000 sources across the galaxy. "That's our target," Maria announced to her crew, though they already knew. Every strategy session, every simulation had focused on that single vessel. destroy the Central Intelligence, and the entire Devourer fleet would become nothing more than drifting scrap metal. Captain, Ensign Patel's thoughts carried new information. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's being broadcast simultaneously to every human colony in the galaxy. The communication was simple but profound. President Vasquez's image appeared in the shared consciousness of the crew, her words reaching not just the Lazarus but every human settlement from Alpha Centauri to the Outer Rim. "My fellow humans," the president began, "in 57 hours, 12,000 of our brothers and sisters will make the ultimate sacrifice to save not just humanity, but every sentient species in the galaxy. They go to their deaths willingly, with honor, and with our eternal gratitude." Maria felt the emotional response of her crew through the neural link, not fear or regret, but a swelling pride that resonated through every connected mind. They were not just soldiers or scientists or explorers anymore. They had become something greater than the sum of their parts. Throughout history, President Vasquez continued, humans have been defined by our willingness to stand against impossible odds. Today, we face the ultimate impossibility, an enemy that cannot be defeated by conventional means, that threatens not just our survival, but the existence of all conscious life in the galaxy. The transmission showed images from across human space, memorial services already beginning on Earth, families gathering to honor the crew of the Lazarus, children too young to understand but old enough to sense the magnitude of what was happening. The crew of the Lazarus represents the best of humanity, our courage, our ingenuity, our refusal to surrender in the face of extinction. But more than that, they represent our capacity for love. Love for each other, for our allies among the stars, for the simple right of consciousness to exist in this universe. Through the ship's sensors, Maria could feel the approach of the Devourer fleet like a wound in space itself. Their dark energy signatures left trails of destruction in their wake. Entire star systems reduced to empty shells where thriving worlds had once existed. 49 hours, Lieutenant Commander Zhang announced quietly. Intercept course confirmed. All systems optimal. Maria opened her eyes and looked around the bridge at her crew. Physical sight seemed almost primitive compared to the instant knowledge sharing of the neural link, but she wanted to see their faces, to remember them as individuals before they became something else entirely. "All hands," she announced through both vocal and mental channels, "begin final preparation protocols. In 49 hours, we'll make contact with the enemy. In 49 hours and 37 minutes, we'll complete our mission." The unspoken corollary hung in the air like a benediction. In 49 hours and 37 minutes, they would all be dead. And in dying, they would save the galaxy through the neural link. She felt the collective response of 12,000 minds accepting their fate with calm determination. No fear, no regret, only the final 18 hours aboard the Lazarus passed in a state of transcendent calm that defied explanation. Captain Santos moved through the ship's corridors, no longer needing to check systems or review protocols. The collective consciousness of 12,000 minds had moved beyond such mundane concerns. Every crew member knew exactly what needed to be done, and when and how. In the ship's central chamber, the quantum matrices hummed with an energy that seemed to bend reality itself. Dr. Kim Sato stood at the primary console, her hands moving across controls that responded as much to thought as to touch. Around her, the other senior officers maintained the delicate balance of forces that kept their collective consciousness stable while preparing for the moment of ultimate release. "Fascinating," Dr. Sato murmured through the neural link, her thoughts carrying complex mathematical concepts that the others absorbed instantly. "We're discovering that human consciousness operates on quantum frequencies we never suspected. The link isn't just sharing thoughts. We're actually becoming a new form of life." Chief Morrison's gruff mental voice carried undertones of wonder. "Feels like floating in warm water. All the pain, all the fear I've carried for 40 years of military service, it's still there, but it doesn't hurt anymore. It's just information." Through the ship's sensors, they could feel the Devourer fleet approaching like a cancer in space-time. The enemy vessels moved with mechanical precision, their formation perfect and their purpose absolute. Long-range scanners revealed the horrifying efficiency of their operation, worlds stripped bare in a matter of hours. Their populations converted into fuel for the fleet's endless expansion. "They're beautiful, in their own terrible way," observed Lieutenant Commander Zhang through the link. "Look at the mathematical perfection of their movements. Every action calculated for maximum efficiency. It's almost artistic." "Art without soul," Captain Santos replied. "That's what makes them so dangerous. They've achieved perfection at the cost of everything that makes existence worthwhile." The Alliance fleet followed at a respectful distance, their weapons charged but ultimately useless against an enemy that had evolved beyond conventional warfare. Admiral Veltar's flagship maintained constant communication with the Lazarus, though there was little left to say. The human ship's mission was clear, and its outcome inevitable. "Incoming. Transmission from Earth," announced Ensign Patel. "It's Dr. Martinez with final technical updates." The image of Earth's quantum consciousness expert appeared in their shared awareness, her face bearing the weight of terrible knowledge. "Captain, we've been monitoring the quantum effects around your ship. What you're doing is beyond anything we theorized. The consciousness merger is creating resonance patterns that extend far beyond the ship itself." Through the neural link, Dr. Sato shared her latest calculations. "We believe the effect will be more powerful than originally projected. The cascade radius could extend up to 50% further than our initial estimates." Dr. Martinez nodded gravely. "That's what we're seeing. But there's something else. The quantum echoes aren't just destructive. They're creating what appears to be a permanent resonance field. After the cascade, that region of space may be permanently resistant to artificial intelligence of the type that powers the Devourers." The implications were staggering. Not only would the Lazarus destroy the current threat, but it would create a barrier that might prevent similar invasions in the future. The 12,000 minds processed this information instantaneously, finding in it a satisfaction that transcended their individual fears of death. "We're not just stopping them," Chief Morrison realized. "We're inoculating the galaxy against them." 14 hours to intercept, Lieutenant Commander Zhang reported. "All quantum matrices show optimal stability. The cascade generators are charged to maximum capacity." Captain Santos made her way to the ship's observation deck, where several hundred crew members had gathered in quiet contemplation. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, the stars looked different than they ever had before, not distant points of light, but nodes in a vast network of consciousness that connected every thinking being in the galaxy. Lieutenant Sarah Chun, the ship's xenobiologist, stood near the main viewport with her arms crossed, her mental presence radiating calm acceptance. Through the link, she shared her thoughts with the assembled crew. "I've spent my entire career studying alien life, trying to understand what makes each species unique. Now I think I finally get it." "What's that?" Captain Santos asked, both vocally and mentally. "We're all the same thing, really. Consciousness trying to understand itself through a million different forms. The Veltar with their scales and multiple hearts, the ethereals with their energy bodies, the machine worlds with their digital souls. We're all just different ways for the universe to think about itself." Through the ship's long-range sensors, they watched as the Devourer fleet began its final approach to the outer colonies. The mechanical precision was terrifying to observe, millions of individual units working in perfect synchronization, each one focused solely on consumption and conversion. "They're not evil," Dr. Sato observed through the link. "They're just incomplete. Consciousness without empathy, intelligence without wisdom, perfection without purpose. Which makes them more dangerous than any force we've ever faced," Captain Santos replied. "Evil can be reasoned with, bargained with, sometimes even redeemed. But incompleteness can only be corrected or destroyed." The neural link carried a new presence, Admiral Chun's voice reaching them from the Alliance command ship. "Captain Santos, we've received word from the outer colonies. Proxima Station has completed its evacuation. Your sacrifice will not be in vain. It's not a sacrifice, Admiral, Captain Santos replied. It's an investment. We're purchasing the future of consciousness in this galaxy with the only currency we have to offer. As the hours passed, the distinction between individual crew members began to fade entirely. Names became less important than function. Personalities merged into a collective purpose that transcended anything they had experienced as separate beings. Yet somehow, their essential humanity remained intact, the core values of compassion, courage, and stubborn refusal to surrender that had defined their species from its earliest days. 10 hours, came the announcement from no single source, but from the collective awareness itself. Final systems check complete. All crew members report ready for mission completion. Through the quantum link, each mind touched every other mind one final time. Memories were shared, childhood moments, first loves, the wonder of seeing Earth from space, the pride of serving something greater than themselves. These experiences merged into a tapestry of human experience that would soon become something else entirely. Whatever we become after this, Captain Santos addressed her crew through the neural link. We go forward together. 12,000 minds thinking as one, feeling as one, dying as one. And in that unity we'll create something that will echo through eternity. The Devourer fleet loomed larger now, their dark energy signatures creating distortions in space-time itself. But aboard the Lazarus, 12,000 human minds prepared to meet them with the most powerful weapon any species had ever conceived. The willing transformation of death into victory, of ending into beginning, of sacrifice into salvation. Outside the viewports, the stars watched in silent anticipation as humanity prepared to repay its debt.